Good evening. I'd like to call the order the July 22nd, 2019 Budget Review Workshop. Claudia, will you call roll, please?
Reinhardt.
Here.
Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Here.
Member Gardner.
Here.
Member Darnell.
Here.
Member Brown.
Here.
Thank you. All right, I think you guys have been given the bylaws and outlines of what the board is. It looks like this. And we won't be making any motions until the final meeting. This is meeting 2, session 2 of the work session, excuse me, session 1 of the work session was the initial budget meeting. Now we're into session 2, which is the work session, and then we'll have a session 3, which is the final budget, where we'll discuss motions, we'll make your motions, and at the bottom of this, it's very clear on how to make a motion, is on number 11. So just keep that in mind when you're gonna go, okay, we accept this motion to the city manager, I propose blah, 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 and you will present it that way, and then it has to be a consensus like we normally do. No real changes. We'll adjourn this work session when we're done. Then we'll reconvene and start the final budget and review it, make our motions, and then go from there. Any questions about this? All right. Excuse me. All right, Wendy, it's all you.
Honorable Chairman, distinguished members, it's my pleasure to submit to you the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. We're going to be going through slides, analyzing just the revenue, performance of expenditures to the revenues, some informational departmental, analyze the general fund very quickly, and then tie it all up with answering some of the variances that you may have, and then I'll open it up to questions in between that. Stop me at any time that you'd like to review and or ask any questions. Obviously, the purpose of the presentation is to present to you the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. The outline for today is we're going to do the citywide budget, a general review of the general fund budget, departmental budget summaries, and just the schedule for the budget adoption, just so you're aware of the dates. Our citywide budget. The citywide budget right now totals $169.1 million, $8.3 million, or 5% more than the last year's budget. Obviously, the collection of impact fees to fund infrastructures and the growth that we have seen, which according in comparison to census and Beaver reports, was a 10K population increase throughout from 2010. That has been seen as an opportunity for us. Citywide reserves at the end of 2020 are projected to be $8.6 million, which is 7.5% more. 12.5% is the threshold, and we are currently holding at 20% fund balance, which is healthy. Budget highlights are ad valorem taxes, $11.7 million. That's a $1.7, almost $2 million increase, obviously based on a millage rate that has been consistent for the last 5 years at 5.1128. That is, of course, inclusive to the property values, and it holds steady and has obviously been incorporated to the revenues for budget. The citywide budget highlights, and my apologies if it's a little dark as I'm looking at it, but impact and mobility fees, understand that these governmental revenues right here are just a strictly fee, no transfers, no other funds other than this to give you a good performance of it at 7.9 and trending to go $1.7 million more than the last current year. So therefore, mobility and impact fees are a very big highlight that we'd like to do for the citywide budget. On the graph, you'll see comparative amounts between fiscal year 19 and 20. Some of the numbers within like mobility fees, you're looking at 3.7 million, 4.6. So some large increases there as we steadily continue to collect our mobility and impact fees at a 96 to 98% rate, which is very good for a municipality industry. Some citywide budget highlights. They're going to cross over to all your departmentals, so I'll just do a caveat for you. $44.7 million is personal services, $3.9 million, almost 10% more than the current year budget. A lot of factors to that are listed below. 5 new positions categorized in police, planning, building, and the city manager departments. A 3% cost of living increase across to all eligible employees. Fire and police union contracts, pay adjustments associated with that, budgeted by 3.8%. And of course, the ever infamous medical and dental costs that increased by 8.4% and 5% respectively. We are, as a city, absorbing as we'd like to continue to take care of our employees, and we will be absorbing the full cost and not having any impact to our staff, therefore having that increase within our expenditures. Operational expenses right now, that's $46.1 million. A lot of portions of that is just personnel. It is actually 0.9, almost that whole percent, less than the current year. I'd like to note in the operational category, most of the departments, if not actually all of them, were tasked with a tough feat to reduce almost by $1 million, which they did. On top of that, after they set that hurdle, they were asked to reduce again by $25,000 to travel and per diem. So it's my feeling, recommendation, and thinking process that at this point we are as lean as can be, and they have made a tremendous effort to be as balanced as possible. Currently, we were going to use about $2 million, $2.5 million in reserves, and we are below that mark increasingly. So we are funding by operations, 98% and 2% from reserves, which is, I think, a phenomenal feat that I'd like to note for you. In capital outlay, we're looking at $6.5 million, $3.4 million less than the current year. Some of those projects, we included some of the bigger ones: Virginia Park facility, the ball field improvement, downtown phase 2, master planning, the Chisholm Park improvements, and the new meter installation. These are just some of the highlights, and the reality for the reduction is that we're getting more accurate as to what we can really do in the current year versus waiting for those projects that just never come through. Citywide budget. This is one of those attractive things, a beautiful graph to see. $169 million populated through all your all your funds. $41 million of that being taken over by the general fund as its biggest holder of that. Capital projects fund at 3.9, and as you can see, if you have any questions about other funds, the top 8 funds are just governmental activities such as fund balance, holding at $23 million. So we wanted to give you a visual of what this looks like of the budget by fund. Citywide expenditures, a little bit more robust information for you. Again, 169 because we are getting out to net zero, so just some simple math, 169 and 169, we're at net zero here. $44 million of personnel services is what is absorbing much of the cost and expenditures for that. We have $28 overall million in reserves. And the rest are spread evenly, as you can see, percentages from the highest to lowest, absorbing our expenditures, creating that net zero effect for the budget. A little more elaborate information for you. We wanted to be very visual on the fiscal year 20 funded positions by department. A total of 5 positions overall, the entire spread of the organization. We went from 696 positions to 701, which were noted in the earlier slide as to what departments that fell. And this was based on council recommendations and requests and the need, of course, of the organization to continue their operations. It overall gave a net effect of 7.5% increase, which we are demonstrating just being funded at an accurate level based on all the reductions and or plateauing at net with 7.5% across all departments. The general fund budget, we're going to analyze that really quick, and general fund totals are at $51.6 million and $4 million, 10% more to the current year. The overall analysis of the general fund is that the research that I did on market analysis on comparative municipalities right now, average cost of raw materials and goods is increasing by 5% exponentially, so therefore 10% budget is the catch-up to the cost to do business. General fund is funded again at 98% from operating revenues with a $1.2 million reserve, making us 98% operating funded, 2% from the reserves, which is definitely a huge betterment than years before.
Question, you, on your previous slides, you talk about 29 or 28 million in reserves. Is that taking the 2 million out? Or is that, I'm looking at your,
Yes, sir.
so that is with the money out?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
In the general fund, of course, $9.8 million equates to 20%, and that, number that we're always looking at to keep our reserves. Currently, my recommendation is that anything above a 25%, we're leaving the ability to budget accordingly. So we're going to keep those thresholds there at 20, 25%. I don't really recommend 30, because then if not, we're just budgeting based on the what if in life, and we're not getting close. One of the requirements to staff that you should have is to always know your operations, know your bottom lines. It's just like your checking account. I know what's coming in and out, and I know the trends. That should be the same expectation. So any higher reserves, then we're doing too much. Like we mentioned earlier, that $3 million general fund overview, we're looking at $6 million in reserves just coming in towards the last of the fiscal year in 19. So just wanted to give you a reason why we're at 20%. We think that is an appropriate amount. General fund by budget, $51 million. Obviously, you can see just the spread of where it's going. Fire and police taking in at $10 million to $16 million respectfully. And general government covers your standard finance, procurement, HR, things of that nature. Transfers, of course, were included, and there's your $8.5 million in reserves picking up the rear. Total budget by expenditure, again, we're at $51 million. The reality of any municipality or anybody in that industry, personnel services are going to be one of the largest eaters of your money. And that's just the robust, benefits we have. It's a large organization to run it. So $31 million soaks up the 61% of the expenditures, making it adequate for the industry that we're in. Departmental budgets. I'm going to go through the departmental budgets, and what I did for you is just give you a nice picture of the department and just what is eating up or absorbing on three main categories, which is operational, my personnel, operating, and capital. This is an overview of the departmental summary, going from City Council all the way down to Parks and Recs, and just giving you an average of what the increases or decreases for the proposed budget are. They range from 14.8, 45 and 0.6% all the way up to 8.4. So they spread, and we'll go across them now. And I'll walk through some of the variances with you, and at any time, like I said, with those you want to question, feel free to stop me. First up is the City Council Department. City Council, their expenditures are composed, as you can see there, with 94% of contingency dollars, and that's because remember, $7 million is including contingency for it, and it kind of, sways their budget reviews. If you're looking at your book, you should have it in this order, and we should be at City Clerk now. And we will be looking at, for variance report, we have one variance report on the page 43. And that is element 40, which is your travel, is $2,158. That's just for CPM travel. Again, stop me if you have any questions at any time. City Clerk is the next one up. And we have personnel services eating up 60%, with 40% coming from operating. And anything to report, your biggest ones would be $11,004 in professional service, and this is due to the branding and marketing. Am I going a little? Did I skip one?
She said city clerk. She meant
City
city
clerk.
manager.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
The first one was council.
Am I right here?
That was
Council.
council.
Sorry. Here
So
we go.
what page was council?
Council's 40.
Sorry, we'll get you back there.
It was just a test to make sure everybody was paying attention.
I mixed her book up on purpose.
She did it on purpose.
It's great teamwork.
I know. She has to keep me humble. All right, here we go. So
Will you give us just a second
Of
to
course.
look at this page?
You got it. Yes, council. Did I skip council? Is that the one I skipped? Okay. Yeah. I skipped one slide.
So we'll just go back to city council variances.
Page 40. He told me. He said, "Whoa."
Just out of curiosity, again, not it being in the political atmosphere all of the time. I'd rather be in that corporate finance thing again that Jeremy talked about, but what are we looking for a federal lobbyist to do for us?
If I could, this year we became an entitlement city, which is over 50,000 population. And so that makes us eligible for different federal funding. And so that federal lobbyist, we're looking at some FEMA grants, possibly some water infrastructure grants, enhance our position in the CDBG funds. We're actually a CDBG fund entitlement city now. Again, I added that to the budget at the direction of council. It's still open for discussion with the council at the workshop next week.
Do we evaluate, if we've had this before, do we evaluate them? So next year at this time, he got us nothing. So what are we doing with him?
Again, every year lobbyists are evaluated by the city council in October, along with the city attorney and the city manager. And that's something we need to look at for every lobbyist we have. We actually, this puts us around $260,000 in lobbying money we're spending, so.
And don't we have a grant writer on staff already? Someone who does the
We do not.
grant research? We do
We
not.
actually outsourced that.
Okay.
She went to another job and we outsourced that to a very competent grant company and actually saved some money doing that.
Right. Okay.
It helps us also align a little bit more to our strategy and make sure, because it is quite cumbersome to write a grant if you don't have that expertise. You know, so finding that fine tune will help us. I think that I was a witness to the lobbyists coming here and presenting, like, these are our results, which really helped council and other members decide, like, are you really doing something, and are we getting the bang for our buck?
Right.
You know, so I think it's a fair question. I think, though, that they're prepared for that and have been trying to really, you know, quantify, hey, we're using lobbyists for these reasons to achieve maybe goals that are a little bit more political than we can be.
Yeah, I didn't realize we already had lobbyists on staff, so thank you for sharing that.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a question. This sheet, page 40, I'm looking at page 27 on our, this, and
Yep.
when I'm seeing these increases here, but I see an increase of 659, making it an 8.74%. If I'm reading this correctly, why wouldn't it match up? The increases match up with this money unless I'm looking at it wrong.
Yeah, is any part of that increase fund balance, or
We do have fund balance in it, which
Okay.
we removed.
do we know how much of that is fund balance, the increase?
Do you
What
see where I'm
fund
at?
was it?
Yep.
I know exactly.
So you're right
I don't
here,
know if
it says 7.5, and it says 9.155, so this is an increase of 659.
I went to page 27. I'm like, 27?
I'm just looking at
That's
page
the
40.
line
I-
you're on.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
one.
I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of page 40 should show me, hey, you have 659 should equal page 40, if we're increasing, because we're asking for the increases. At least my understand,
No, you're right. You're right on.
my, that makes sense, and it's not matching up at, not even in the ballpark.
Well, the variances are just for the individual increases over $2,000. So we're not adding up all the variances and say, that's our total variance. They're not even reporting their variances as the negative variances they have. If you look at their detail line item, page 39 in the white book, you'll see every single line item variance, and you'll see negatives and you'll see some positives. But we're only showing you the variances over 2,000 because you didn't want to see or want explanations for anything under that. Has always been kind of the general rule.
Which is fine, I'm just, when I see a $659,000
Yeah,
increase,
that's a $400,000 difference compared to what is listed.
so yeah, my expectation would be, unless, I don't think we have a total of that many accounts that are under $2,000 that would equal for just city council at $659,000. Am I just off on this? Or am I?
No, I'm looking
I'm
at
gonna
it.
ask the same question.
Because if we're documenting on page 40 the increases only, that should give me a ballpark of the 659 ballpark. I can't imagine having 400,000 worth of $1,000 increases,
City
and that's why it's
council,
not seen on here.
9155,
Yeah.
75.
9155 with a
Or
659,000.
page 39 in that same book
Doesn't
is
match up.
the detail line items. Your current budget is 7.5. And your 20 budget is 9155. Do you see those two bottom numbers? And these are all the variances.
Which is,
So it's not, the variance isn't 659.
the 659 isn't the variance total, it's the difference between prior and proposed. That's why it doesn't match up to, you're looking to see that 21% right there, but this is just comparing it to current budget and proposed. Doing the math right here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's 659.
it's 659.
That's not
But I'm-
correct.
A
But
million
isn't it
six,
the-
you're right, a million
It's
six, sir.
1.6.
1.6.
Yeah, she's removed, that 659, I believe she's removing the contingency
I'm
out of
removing
it.
it, yep.
She's got some slides where contingency has been removed to show true variances of increase, because contingencies aren't true expenditures any more than fund balance forward is true revenue. So some slides remove it, and then she just shows the difference. These pages show it with contingencies in here. You have a $8.5 million contingency in your differences.
Okay, I got it now.
You got it.
Yep.
Sorry. It's just a difference in what she's comparing on the slides versus the actual contingencies are included in some, and some they are not.
But these, page 40 is amongst the 659?
No,
No, sir.
page 40 are just the increases on page 39.
So page 40 takes
That
a
are over
snapshot of
2,000.
those 2,000, anything that hit $2,000 and above.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, starting with professional services, yeah. But her slide does not include this line item called contingency. Her differences. It should just didn't add up the difference correctly on the slide. Which is, yeah. But these are her true increases that are the variances.
Yeah, I wanted to show you true increases per department, which doesn't line up, I guess, mathematically it does, but not visually. You're absolutely correct visually, so we can visually fix that. I just
No,
I just did some ninja mathematics, I guess, so I apologize for that.
I just wanted that to,
Mathematically, it
I was
doesn't add up.
expecting it to kind of,
Last year, I brought up moving the contingency to a different, area, and that, I guess, didn't go with that
I
recommendation.
think we talked about for like a hurricane fund. Okay.
No, when Rick was here last year, we talked about moving it to like a 9999, its own little department fund outside of all of this, so then it doesn't confuse city council's budget at all.
I do remember you talking about
Yes,
the
yeah, I remember
999.
Tom.
You
Yeah.
did mention
Excuse
that.
me, Mr. Darnell. I do remember that. That was never acted on.
Yeah.
But that's something we can
Well,
look at.
we can do that, but some of the issues where I've talked to some of the other senior accountants is the reason that it is in the city council's line item like a regular department, because it is contingency funds, and if we did have a major disaster, we could quickly just use that expenditure line item without going outside of our budget, if need to be, if it was a true emergency.
Yeah, you
We've
could still
never
just
considered
do a
it.
budget amendment, moving the monies. I mean, that's not a big deal
Right,
either.
a budget amendment takes 6 weeks, almost 2 months to complete a budget amendment. In the case of an emergency, you don't have to do a budget amendment if we leave it in this line item. I mean, we can look at moving some of it out, not putting all of it there,
I
keeping
mean,
a
it's still in the
certain.
general fund. It's
It's, yeah, they've always had it in their council because they feel it's their council contingency for them to, if they need to use it for emergency purposes, it would already be aligned in the proper place. But we can definitely take a look at, different categories. We talked about it last year. We just haven't, a change in finance director might be something we need to look at this year. Adding a non-departmental contingency.
Is it,
And a
is it
9,000
for
number.
emergencies? Or is it for, hey, we over budget, under budget, and we do another 8 amendments like we did last year?
No, sir, that's the biggest thing that we're trying to avoid is not having that, you know what I mean? Because we should be better aligned. And I know you probably want to speak with that a little bit more as far as, fine tuning, having so many budget amendments through the year. So that's the goal, is to reduce them.
Okay.
So help us understand the simple math then, because, maybe those working in government accounting get this a lot easier than we do. Don't you be laughing. The differential on page 27 of your handout that you prepared so nicely for us is that 659,000. Contingency on page 139 is the differential of 1.4 million, correct? So
Contingency, yes, yes, ma'am.
if you take the 1.4 with the overall to 1.6, that comes closer to the 180,000 that is listed on the next page, let's just say, of all the, different and budgets. Where's the other money? And you're saying that's,
Yeah, because what Mr. Reinhardt noted correctly was that number in the increase or decrease, he's correct, it should be 1.6. That 659 is incorrect. He was, yes.
okay. I did not hear that part.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, he was right. I noted 1.6 and that's why I said I was doing ninja mathematics. It was my bad. So it should be 1.6, ma'am, which would equate back instead of that 659 that he noted.
Okay.
Yes.
So then it's the 1.6, but we only have approximate 180,000 in budget differentials. Help us. Every year, I'm sure we talk about this.
Okay, so if you look at the contingency line on page 39, this year's 7.1, and next year's anticipated at 8.5, that's a $1.4 million variance.
Okay.
That's the chunk.
Got it.
That's what you're missing.
Got it.
And we're not going to report that variance because the departments, it's a number that they don't
Absolutely.
deal with. Yeah. Okay.
Told you we did it every year. I just need to point it out.
No, that's fine. Like I've mentioned before, it helps to get those constructive criticisms because it would avoid us driving you nuts too. So if we would have just added the line and then showed you, hey, this is contingency and took it out on the variance report, that's something we can, easily fix. So I welcome anything, take it apart. So.
Do our answers get better each year?
Absolutely.
I did hear we added page numbers, so 1 point. I want to note it in case we become deficit 1 point, we get 1. All right. Let's see if, then we clarified that with the 1.4. Thank you, Mr. Reinhardt, for the 1.6 correction, and we are square. Any other questions besides the lobbyist on that variance? Okay. Moving over to, now correctly, the city clerk with 60% on personnel services, 331 in operating, no capital to report. The variance discussion for the city clerk is one item, which was the travel for CPM at 2,000 for the deputy city clerk. Legal services, as you see after you flip the variance report, is included in the city clerk as a whole. Just a note for you all. So the two totals of the sheet create that amount. City manager, we have 700,000 in personnel, 67%, and 33,000 in operating, with quite not making it into the points percentage for capital outlay at 1,530. Variance reports 11,004 due to the branding and marketing for the logo for the county. OpenGov maintenance 77,500, and an increase due to the standard operating software, operating supplies at $5,083.
It was discussed, new finance software, is that in city manager, or is that going to be in finance? Like for fixed assets and some other stuff that was brought up 2 meetings ago?
My brief on the software system at this current time, we do have OpenGov, which is going to take our financial system and make it user-friendly, so you have great dashboards for committee members, council members. So at this point, I don't have any intention of presenting a new finance software because we do have something that potentially is worth what we're investing to get a better user-friendly versus that MS-DOS format for the AS400. So I think it's a pliable source. It's taking all our data from the AS400, batching it up, and you as a user. So I think before we make that definite implementation and fixed asset expenditure, we need to look at this because we're testing right now, and it does seem like it has some really great, robust, user-friendly reporting that would justify what we need, because the back-end stuff is really our accountants. I don't foresee right now the AS400 being so antiquated. I mean, it's a J.D. Edwards platform.
Well, we talked about fixed assets with the budget amendments. IT was one, it's like 50,000 or something. And we talked about how tracking your fixed assets would prevent that. And then, I mean, the director of finance at that time said they didn't really do it very well, or they needed new software. And so then that's how we got to that discussion. So I don't know if he was wrong, but in an effort to avoid budget amendments, that's how that came up. So.
Well, I just want to remind the committee that some of those budget amendments were directed by council and also emergencies that were not foreseen by any kind of budget. And
Yeah, but the IT is not.
Well, no, that was one, but that was directed by council, if I remember correctly. But I think where you're talking about, Mr. Brown, was we have one solution, which is the new updated version of the AS400 that we're working towards. Should be about 18 months away. But I think with this platform, with OpenGov, it'll provide both the back end and the front end for more transparency for both this panel and also the public. And that's kind of one of my goals, is to be more transparent with our budget process, our key performance indicators, and our strategic plan. So that is in the works from the information technology.
And I think to just give you some history too, because you mentioned fixed assets, and I think you're also in relation talking to the tracking of it. So I have currently been in actual fixed asset inventory, sneakers up and property up. And you are correct. There are some things that have swayed a little bit from the $1,000 threshold and the understanding of the differences between what is capital, leased furniture, and how we correctly parent-child that relationship to capture our costs. So there is going to be some resolutions to, one, dispose of things that have been here since, no kidding, 1975 on the books. It's fully depreciated, so I'm cleaning up those books with our fixed asset technician. Inventory should be done on the 31st of July. As far as the reporting goes, and paperwork will be done mid-August, so we are in compliance. So there is a definite shift because there was a little bit of transition, if you can say that, with guidance in how we bulk everything up or not, and we're correcting that right now. We had a lot of information technology software, how transfers are coming up, all the forms were updated, and the process is slowly streaming back into alignment with the policy, because it just, if anything, the inner workings of fixed assets and how we depreciate and the longevity of life, shelf life, that's more of the accountant's responsibility versus the actual inventory and possession. But we're trying to educate the staff with that to realign them now that there is a new finance director, and I'm looking into that. But I've been actually hands-on with that, and there is going to be some corrective measures that you'll see, a big reduction in a lot of the inventory itself, and also how IT is procuring in and transferring out to those cost centers to adequately fix the books. So I think that was where you were going with the
And
IT
your
side.
software is strong enough, all that, to handle that. It's fine to handle that. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I think also, if I remember the conversation, it was we want to be able to track assets and know, when does preventative maintenance need to happen? When does it need to put money away to replace it? I think that's the conversation.
That's how
we-
software,
Correct.
software can do that, yeah, that's how it
Right.
came
I
up.
think that was what your point was, is like, we need to be able to be forward-looking and say, well, we need to prepare that this piece of equipment will expire at this time and
Right.
have the money set aside, not have to come back and say, oh, we need to borrow some money from
Yeah.
contingency to do
Which
This
that.
is an
good
emergency.
software will
Correct, I
send
got
out
you.
notifications,
Correct.
and then.
I got you.
And then
Correct.
you don't have to.
Yep, and the AS 400, let's say on that, as far as capturing costs, let's say right now we are currently using 18 subcategories to track that asset. It really has about 100 items that you can add, from life cycle, depreciation life, maintenance that we can capture. And also, we're in the process of establishing an accurate labor cost for that to add to our internal service fund. So fully on top of that right now.
Nice.
Okay? That's all I had for.
She's on the phone.
Included in the city managers is also the public information. You'll see on page 49 is their variance with professional services at 20,000. This is you're going to see the balance off of this is the media service staff transferred to the marketing department, so you'll see a decrease in IT expenditures from this. Everything else is that transfer, marketing needs at 3,000, and again, operating supplies to transfer that staff. Human resources. Personnel cost, Personnel cost, $5.115 million, $217 million for, operating expenses and no capital outlay. Sorry, as I flip through with you. On the variance report of that, we have, of course, what you're going to hear throughout is the employer FICA increasing by 12% for the contributions. Additional $10,000 for any litigations against the city for legal services at a 33% increase. Recruitment in the upper management staff was $1,000, and then the cost of training for maintenance of certifications that are necessary was $6,001 at 45%. Clicking to procurement. Personnel services, it's at 80%, 149, 20% of that in operating, very minimal at 2,800 in capital outlay. And I am going to go from the back here. And I skipped one, sorry. All right, first one, page 54 for you. 109,000 in salary, wages, and benefits. A project manager, obviously from the explanation, was budgeted. So there was a creation of including the director of a position that was budgeted, and a chart of accounts change for the cost center was created. So therefore, it looked like we budgeted for something and then had to transfer it over to an entire new chart of accounts because procurement fell under finance before, and now it's been segregated to its own cost department. Maintenance contracts, there's a software and maintenance renewal for that project manager at 2005, and then, of course, training at CPM for the director, which is a significant change, as I mentioned before, across the network, 25K reduction in training, travel and training. The next one after page 54 is page 58, and of course, it's going to be the caveat of the health insurance due to the premiums.
I've got 56, I'm sorry.
56, yes, sir. 56, procurement and health insurance, element 23. The increase of the health insurance due to the premiums and annual fees for contractual services increased at $2,400. Warehousing, let me flip one more in case we have anything. 13,005 grants consultant for the state and federal grants. management, this has a lot to do with obviously us losing the person that left grants, and we are using the expertise of them for the vetting of everything that we submitted, such as what we have up there for FEMA and consultative, services as we need them for grant development.
Is this another thing that we will evaluate, that they're working for us?
Absolutely. And like I said, what's nice about using a contracted grant writer, we only use them when we need to. We don't have to pay them every day, and we'll evaluate to see what their success rate is.
They gave us that, those tools telling us about, he's actually pretty good with us to always tell us like, hey, you can do this on your own to save a couple bucks, so we're really happy with that part. Okay, sorry, I'm moving between two here. Finance Department at 76% in personnel services and 24% in operating, 1,500 in capital outlay. Flip to that page for finance, the variance reporting at first one in the finance department, the 3% raise, of course, and the 8%, the 8.5% increase in premiums is one of the big ones. If in the event we needed to prepare for the potential single audit for 1920 at 30,192, and this was in reference to our grants. Last year, we did not reach the threshold where we needed a single audit, but we're projecting this year that we will need a single audit to be within the CEFA requirements, so we're preparing for that. Any questions? Utilities at 2,000, that's just rates of water and electric. In the accounting, again, the same raises, 3% across. We reclassified an accounting clerk, maintaining that cost neutral at 34,000. With the turnover, we're a senior accountant down. We've had an overtime that we're looking for until we, quantify that position at 3,003. FICA health and training, we just had the addition to the comptroller who was hired on and promoted to start the CPM classes as well. Total increase is at 44,400 there. Information technology. 50% is going to personnel services, 47% is going to operating expenses, and 3% is going to capital outlay. In the variance reporting of that, 6,458 is the closed caption system and software. Did I skip one?
No, just make sure. I need glasses.
Closed caption system and website software. And then in the GIS division, operating supplies at 2,400.
Just future, if you can, I
Yes,
like
sir.
what you guys did in finance for your, what's it say, increase account, 44,000 or 5%. Seems like you guys, finance is the only one who put that on their sheets. So I like the way that looks, so future.
It's real
Yes, sir.
simple.
Yeah,
real simple
it just
fix.
looks good. Now there's a number and there's a percentage, so I think it looks good that way.
Overachievers.
Yeah,
No, it's good. It's a good idea.
So we will note that and add the percentages to each of the variances for the departments. Planning and zoning is your next tab there. Personnel costs at 77%, operating expenses at 23%, and not even hitting a percentage really at $7,900 for capital outlay. Turning to page for the variances at page 71. First, of course, the effect of COLA and the salary survey that was conducted. Salary survey bringing everybody up to what the market value is. We're still not there, but close enough, and the COLA across the board. That, of course, turned over into FICA and health insurance, increase in premiums, as we noted before, and publications at $5,100 and training at $7,600 due to an increase in staff.
it's the number of staff that created such an increase.
I will tell you right now.
Seems like a lot in training and a lot in books, unless you're doing like 10 or 12 members, that makes more sense, but.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Two people wouldn't fly, really, with this expensive training.
Next page. Next page. Okay. So one position was done. Yep, from the building department. And it was a mid to top range position.
And their training of $7,600, or are they going to Hawaii or something for this training?
Only once.
I know, that's what I'm saying, that's one person. None of your trainings thus far has even come close to that number.
We'll pull the line item for you if you want. I'll tell you.
And there are books, so you say increase in staff, so man, now their books cost $5,000? That's an expensive book.
We will pull up for you.
It is deceiving. It does say filled several vacant positions.
Well, can I comment on that? Do you mind?
Sure.
This current year that we're in, that you're comparing that budget to, the council had directed the planning department to fill some frozen positions mid-year. So we did bring those up mid-year, but this year is like a full effect of all of those funded positions. That department went from a 5 FTE to a 14 employees because of the demand of the growth in the planning department. I'm sure Andre, if you would like him to give you any more information, he can probably
I'm just,
elaborate on it.
when I'm looking at this, and we tell me one employee is the training, that doesn't seem to, I said, I'd really like to know what that could be, and the books that would require $5,000.
Do you think it's one employee? I suspect it's many.
It says
I know it
that,
says additional staff, but could it been
And there's
additional staff she's talking about?
yeah, I could see 14.
Right.
That would make more sense.
He's right here. That's who they should ask.
If he's here, let him speak on it.
Please, it might be faster.
Andre, I have your details.
You want the details to give them? This is your training.
I have my details.
You have it?
Yeah.
I just have it.
Another overachiever.
Good evening, Andre Anderson, Planning Zone Director. And as Ms. Murray said, we had several vacancies and several positions that were frozen, that were unfrozen mid-year. So she is correct, we went from about 5 or 6 employees up to a total of 13 mid-year. So then we had to accommodate those costs for training, books, and supplies. In addition to that, we also took on the expense of paying for full memberships for the entire Planning and Zoning Commission members to have membership to the American Planning Association at the board rate, which is not something that we did before. We had less last year.
Do we need everybody to be a part of whatever you're speaking of?
It is a group membership, yes. It's at a discounted rate rather than an individual membership. It's a group.
And what does that benefit us?
It benefits the Planning Commission to better be enlightened on planning issues that they vote on each month.
So that group rate that's what that $7,000 number is?
No, again, that includes the additional, do my math here, 6 and 7 positions that was funded that is now being realized for the entire year, upcoming year.
So that goes for the training and the books, publications, and memberships, right?
That is correct.
For those additional 7 positions.
That is correct.
That makes a lot more sense
Than
than
one.
one person.
No.
Well, yeah, that's why it says increase in staff,
Yeah, well, that's what,
yeah.
So the training is local, it's just for materials mostly?
The training is both local and national. It varies depending on what training we are sending folks to.
national,
Yes.
such as,
Any location outside of the state of Florida.
I know what national
Yeah, I
means.
mean, I'm not trying to know what the question is.
What is, if it's part of here, you should go national. They're going to Tennessee, 3 of them. That's what I expect when you say national.
Yes, so and we budget for at least 2 positions to go to a national conference. We're members of the American Planning Association, and we'll budget on typically at least 2 positions to attend a national conference, which goes anywhere across the state of the nation, depending on what year it is. This coming year, the national conference will be in Houston.
That's a lot more like it. I know what national means.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just have a question on the professional services. Is there something that didn't happen this year? Why there's a reduction of $200,000?
So for professional services, we have ongoing services, and the work that was started in the prior year continued over in the following year, and so that's why we were able to not budget as much for this coming year.
I think that helps tremendously compared to the one employee. So, figure he had the answers.
He does.
Yep.
Just to clarify the descriptor under the salaries and wages, where it says filled several vacant positions, is that a mistake? Is it just the one?
No, so over time, there were some vacancies, and we have, since we've been preparing the budget, we have at least filled one already, and so it probably needs to be updated. We currently have 2 vacant positions right now that we need to fill before the end of this fiscal year. And one that's identified but not funded.
Is 14 enough or 13 enough, or are you going to need more?
Actually, it's not, but that's for another discussion, another time, I'm sure. Based on our growth and everything, there's not enough positions. We are actually making do. Yeah, according to finance, we have enough, but from my perspective, we
And from the
don't.
city manager.
Can we go back to
But
the
that's a
national
different
question?
Bill says it's enough.
So just for me to be clear, so the one position we talked about, am I missing where that was?
It's actually
That's
2
the-
positions.
That's the OL that came over to you.
Where it says several vacant
We said,
positions.
we talked about one position, that's how we brought up training,
Well,
because we thought it was for one position.
Oh.
Took on the position.
right, but we also.
Reclassified it, so I don't know what it is.
Right. So so there's 2 positions. There's one that's CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, that's mostly grant funded. And then there's also one position that the board specifically requested that we add to our budget, which may ultimately be within the planning department, or it may go into the city manager's budget. And that is for a business navigator. That's the term that's been identified, and that's a board requested position.
So this dollar amount represents 2 positions then, not one as
Yes.
stated?
Yes.
But I thought that dollar amount also included the positions that were frozen last year. So you had to make an adjustment there for those positions.
The other side.
Portion of it, yes. You had the frozen
That we
positions.
unfroze.
Yeah, the mid.
So it would be for more than 2 positions.
These are for 2 new positions, but then the unfrozen positions have to be accommodated for this coming year.
How many more could you use?
Are you going to approve them?
I can speak to that.
I can throw 3 out.
Remember, they had to get cut 25,000 out of their salary bucket.
Any other questions for him? Thank you for that update.
Yes.
Only 25 to go. We're rolling.
Yes, sir. Building Maintenance Department is next with 50% in personnel services, 50% in operating capital, and no capital outlay. We have no variance to report in. Nope, no, don't hit me, don't hit me.
Huge variance.
I know, you guys keep me up to speed. We have a whole bunch.
Yeah.
I try to say there was none. Okay. One custodian staff being included at 5,000. Zone control upgrade and assessment for City Hall at 27.2. I'm going to highlight the large ones. Tell me if you want me to touch on the 2,000 Ks. 13,000 for that comm service device. This is an increase to technology for current and additional staff. Repairs and maintenance at 95,665 to cover the cost of the zone control replacement. 2 additional vehicles added at 4,000 for vehicle maintenance. And there is 3,000 on other current charges to cover the increased property tax and customer service week. 9,000 to cover supplies needed for the additional park and added maintenance in operating supplies. The increase of fuel, of course, has brought it to 2,895 for vehicle fuel. Increase to staff. They require uniforms and attire, non-slip shoes that the custodian staff will need. That is 2,500 in taxable uniform. Your favorite $2,000 in books and publications for memberships for the architect, and 9,100 in training for the new and current staff coming on board. And in this case, they're outlining the 1 additional staff in custodial.
No questions?
All right, the police department. Police department coming in at 82% in personnel services, 17% in operating, and 1% at 61,000 in capital outlay. Variance. All right, huh? 77? Yes, ma'am, 77. Salaries and wages with the new COLA at 108. Union contract and the effects on the new position increased calls for service at 52.2.
That's overtime, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you give me that increase percentage? I'm just a little curious. That seems they already have a set amount, I'm assuming, for their budget, and we're going to go up 52,000. Seems like a lot.
That is an 18% increase
18% increase.
in overtime, yes, sir.
Is that that seems really high. Can we explain that? Why? I've not heard an 18% increase in any overtime in any budget. Unless you can touch on that. I've never heard of that.
Let me have Chief.
What's the
Pete.
grand total then if it's 52, 18% of what? So where are we at grand total?
$349,401 comparative to last budget year at $297,000.
That's a lot.
Yes, sir.
A lot of overtime. David?
Yeah, good evening, Dave Pearson, Police Department. I agree with you, it is a large increase. A lot of it because of the union contract. We changed our overtime from 170 to 85 hours every 2 weeks. So on a union contract, it actually increased it by $32,000, I believe. Also, we have a new position, also calls of service and growth needs has increased our overtime.
Man, do we know what that's in compared to other agencies of this size of an overtime budget of $300,000? I'm not sure.
I've never done a comparison before. This is based upon historical numbers in the past. And
Because we've increased,
COLA?
that's an incredible increase, 18%. I know union.
well, a lot
what
of
you're
it is union
saying.
contract.
Yeah, I get that.
And then we're covering.
Dan, we got to start evaluating our overtime if that's, if I
Well-
get your,
And also, we got to deal with call to service and growth potential too. I mean, we got 1 new positions for next fiscal year, and we were down many officers.
we've
So
always, every year, we've gone up in our overtime budget,
that's correct
every year.
You
But
said there's only 1 new position for next fiscal year.
for the police department.
I thought I saw.
How many
3.
new positions did we do last year?
We did 11, police. And
And we're expecting a growth of what this coming year?
5%.
Population?
Yes, ma'am.
Huge increase. Is fire going to be the same thing? They're going to come in here with a $400,000 overtime budget? That seems like a lot of money, Chief.
Yeah.
A lot of money. I get why, but I mean, That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but one of the challenges that I want to bring forward is the fact that every year we come and identify to the council the fact that we go all the way back to 2002 with a council agenda recommendation of 2.2 officers per 1,000. If you do the math, we should have 119 sworn officers. We have 95. And yet we're the ninth fastest growing community, and the city manager and the management staff here is doing the best that they can with the budget that we have. And this year's a thin budget, so we're obviously cutting back in hopes that we're able to get new personnel for next year. And yet for 7 out of the last 10 years, we have crime reduction each and every year. But the bottom line is we're doing the best we can, and yes, our overtime is high because we don't have the personnel cost to hire those additional personnel that we desperately need. We'll get them eventually. That's why we have a community task force coming forward, but that's a direct reflection on having to do more with less and having to use overtime to be able to accommodate that. School resource issues and the mandates from the state of Florida have forced us to put personnel, to cover extra personnel to be able to do that. And all of that stuff's to add up very, very quickly, including the adjustment, as Mr. Pearson said, with the overtime as far as the union is concerned.
I know you've been challenged to make cuts and all the stuff they wanted to do at the beginning of our meeting they discussed about, but how many new officers do you feel you need this year that would help with that $300,000 number?
Well, I guess that would all be based on personnel input. Honestly, as many as we can get our hands on, because we're a fast-growing city. If we had 6 or 8, it would be great. But in working with the city manager, again, we looked at what the budget impact was going to be. And when you start adding up personnel costs and the cost of those individuals, it far exceeds that $300,000. Because to put a police officer out there on the street, when it comes to personnel costs, equipment costs, cars and everything, we're talking about $120,000, $125,000 per. So it doesn't get us very far. So believe it or not, the overtime is a better way to go for us to cover that large gap.
Does the, that COLA survey, you mentioned a ratio, officer to citizens. Did it cover that COLA? Because there's compensation survey. Did it talk about, maybe give you some concrete data to take to city council?
We do.
What that ratio is?
We absolutely have the data, and one of the things going forward is the upcoming community public safety task force is going to make some long-term recommendations on the public safety side for police and fire. And that's a broad scope that we're going to be looking at, because we have not only personnel issues, we've got fire stations to build in a public safety structure need long-term, that we have a building we're completely out of room, and we got to find means to do it sometime in the future.
I'd really like to know what equal agencies are putting. That's a lot of money. I've never heard of an 18% increase. Number one, I've never heard of a $300,000. I'd be curious, like, what an OPD budget, overtime budget is, or an 800-man department. So how are we in comparison at a 95-man police department? I understand what you're saying, and Bill, but I don't know if we've ever. And you've been doing this a whole lot longer than me. Have we ever had any agency? I've got fully staffed. I don't know if it's even possible to ever be fully staffed at your 2.2 man per 1,000. I don't know if that's a number, but I don't know if it's ever been reached. Have you, in your career at any agency, have ever had that?
National average is 2.4, and we're not even at 2. We're barely at 2. Not even at 2.
That's right. But any agent, OPD. Any agency.
There are a number of agencies that are at that level, but we're obviously nowhere close to that.
Yeah, we're not even in the
At
ballpark.
2010, we were at that level, 2.2, and then every year we go down and down and down, and we can't get out of that hole.
The other side of that, I just want to go on record, there's a disagreement on what is our population. You have the Beaver, is where we get our state revenues from. That's validated by the University of Florida. Then you have the census. And the census is done every 10 years. So one's at 46 to 47,000, one's at 55,000. So I'm split in the middle. So I'm just calling it 50,000. That's why I threw that number out there. So I think with the census is going to give us a true number here next year, and then give us some time to look at some different financing packages. And like I said, the unforced expenses is having to cover some of those charter schools too in detail. And I think that was an unfunded mandate from the state, and that's just carried over. And then you have the union contract, so those numbers just keep exponentially growing.
I'm assuming, though, with the charters, at least I had heard that we were charging a whole lot more than we do as a traditional SRO. Is that true?
That is true, but it doesn't cover the additional coverage at times that we have to make up for the off-duty that does cover those. And we have an additional one coming on board now with 4. But overall, like Dave said, one of the big hurdles here was the impact with the adjustment with the union contract, which was a big piece of this 18%.
Every year.
Yeah.
And more events. I mean, we're covering more events. And some of this,
More events.
Yeah.
Mr. Reiner, the other thing, and like I said, you knew my position previously, was a lot of those overtime costs were kind of hidden, and we're actually breaking those out now in detail. So like I know the fire department budget can show you, we spent this much money on 4th of July and this much money on Rockin' the Cloud. So I asked them to break that out so we can actually look at that every year.
As the city manager was saying, each and every city specialized event, we provide personnel at overtime cost to be able to cover that security for those events, and it does build. But I go back to that, of that 341,000 of that was just a union contract alone. Then you can start to peel back the layers of different specialized details and things that go on.
So even though it's a city event, you have to automatically cover it out of your budget. You're not reimbursed for event fees or anything like that because it's part of the city.
That's correct.
Dave, I wanted to point out in 2017, their fiscal year actual expenses was $387,000 in overtime that they paid out.
Did we do an amendment or something?
20.
144,000?
In 2017, you had an amendment, yes, sir. We are trying to give a little bit more data with that and help PD to kind of establish, because I know once we don't have market analysis to it, it kind of defeats the purpose. Are we at the same levels? And trying to get him those numbers too, because I've personally been a witness to the strategy going back to trying to minimize as much overtime and making it still happen by developing the squads differently. I just recently seen that and got to explain that. We're trying to help on the finance department to give him, should he be at those 2.5 numbers, and what does that cost, and the rate of return to us too, because we're getting money like things from the charter, but every time we put a seat of an officer somewhere or a fire person, we don't know right now, does it cost us $300 the minute his rear touches that seat? And that's what we're trying to get him, because what if we're making $200 and it costs us $300, so we're negative $100 every time somebody drops? And so we're establishing those thresholds so he could have a better, scope to warrant the overtime. But I think it's a way, it would cost us much more with the benefits package that we are trying to absorb just now.
I'm just used to, it seems like every year I'm hearing huge increases. I get it, completely get it, but it's just, man, that's sitting here as a citizen. It's probably, I bet you if it's not the highest in the city, it's probably close.
Well, the bottom line there, the contrary is more personnel at 3 times that cost. So we're having to offset it. We're kind of going the least expensive way to get the job done.
But it can become a safety factor if I'm burning you out with overtime.
You're absolutely correct.
And then you start, boom, workman's comp. It's just a chain reaction when and I know the guys all love, hey, man, give me overtime. I'm making 90 when I'm coming in at 48. So they're loving it. But I think you can, and I just know what can happen over time. And I get your ratio of, hey, man, 10 new guys are going to cost me $3 million or whatever. That's compared to just 300,000.
I'd rather have the 3 million and the 10 any day of the week, but we got to do what we got to do to make the budget work.
I just know, are we going to be sitting here next year going, hey, another 26% increase, a 12% increase? It seems like every year we're continuing to go up. I know population's growing, but we need to start making up some of the difference for them some way, somehow, to give them what they need in the future, if possible.
Is there like a ratio with the population that you have seen that makes sense? Like as we grow 5% per year, the dollar amount goes up X? Is there like a number you're able to figure out? Am I explaining what I'm?
I understand,
That's what I'm saying,
I
yeah.
understand what you're saying, and, you know, here's my, what's that? Yeah, my experience with it when I ran like the Beaver and the census comparative, right, was that off the cuff, the number of increase from 2010 when the census printed to right now comparative to the Beaver only showed 10,000 residents coming in between 2010 and 2018, right, or where we're waiting. So it's really hard to quantify 10,000 over a spread of 8 years. It's not going to be 5%. It's going to shift like, 4%. So we're trying to add all the other costs that come with that to get a good ratio is 2.5 consistent with the city that we're running, and get data that's, correct with PD to cover what they need to do on top of being financially sustainable too. So we can definitely do that calculation. And we were just talking about comparing with Kissimmee, who's, our local annex neighbor here, and other cities. We just did a survey with a Florida organization that you can, Florida cities, that you can actually put in your zip code for your city, and they will tell you these are the counties that are commensurate in size. And we just finished that survey, so that could be a tool to get some data like that.
I'd be
We could-
curious what Kissimmee's overtime budget is.
We'll definitely check and get back to you on that one.
Yeah, because I know their numbers are higher,
Oh, yeah.
population's bigger.
And they had the two same factors we're doing is they also did a 3% COLA to equalize as well across and the union contracts shifted that a great bit too. So they've
Yeah.
had exponential
And
cost
the
as well.
next meeting we have in October, if you can come up with those numbers, I'd just be curious to see what are they averaging, what's their off, because I'm sure they're down numerous officers. I don't know any agency who's not down 10,
Actually,
12 officers.
Kissimmee right now is at full strength.
Really?
Yep.
That's a first.
Yes, it is.
They've never been.
Yeah.
He must be getting, his city manager must be hooking them up.
They're at
Mike
full
is.
strength. We were there today for a meeting, and they're at full strength.
Good for him.
If my math is correct, they're out of all of their pay, the salaries, overtime, and special pay, overtime is 5% of that.
Okay.
We'll get you those numbers.
Just curious.
Yeah, sure. The fire department. Thank you, chief. Fire department, 81% in personnel services, 19% in
I don't
operating.
think we went
Yeah, we never
down the
went
rest
over.
of the police.
Yeah, we
David
stopped
stopped our progress.
We stopped at overtime.
Oh, I'm
You
sorry.
guys
I'm
don't
seeing-
get off
Correct,
that
yes, yes,
easy.
I'm seeing
You're
radios at
correct.
80 grand.
You're correct.
Enforcement and EOC also.
Yeah,
You
sorry
know, there's a
about
lot of, like I said, yeah, we stopped at overtime.
Let's talk about that
that. Let's
pension.
talk about that. I sent you away, chief. I'm so sorry.
I don't
I
mind.
tried. Our plan didn't work.
I don't mind.
Okay, starting at, I'm going to flip one more page because I'm behind. Didn't I do 77? Oh, that's right. Yep. Contractual services, there was a transfer overall reduction in the account, 14,004 is the total. Increase in lab fees subpoenas at 3,500. A new position, comm services, 6,562.
I'm sorry, just for question on, I know what ICMA is, pension ICMA, is there something, I thought ICMA was what I contribute to ICMA, not you. So why is that, if it's just pension, I get pension, but it says pension ICMA, ICMA is what we contribute, not what you contribute.
Colin
Correct,
likes
but
to answer this one.
It's the pension expense, it is correct, but some ICMAs, depending on what plan you have, some are contributions from the city for directors or chiefs, so it's just pension / ICMA, that's just the name of the account. But it is the pension expense, and it is up quite a bit. It's the 603,000, is that what you're looking at? It's, it's easy to explain. This current year and every year, when we get the money in from the fire and from the state for the insurances and things, we usually put that on the final budget amendment and bring it up at that time. Well, because of the number of budget amendments, we decided to be a little proactive and go ahead and estimate the amount we're going to get from the state and get it in there now. And there will be a corresponding revenue line for that money. It's $343,774. And the other increase is the calculation for the overtime. It's whatever you do in overtime, you have to add 28% for the pension, because all of their overtime is pensionable.
Yeah, pensionable income.
You'll see the exact same increase in pension on the fire side for the exact same reason, that state money comes in for fire and for police.
So the 39% increase compared to last year, a lot of that just has to do with you being proactive, like you said, instead of waiting for an
Correct.
amendment.
What it's comparing it to, I haven't hit it with a budget amendment this year. So
Okay.
when that money comes in, you'll see it on the final budget amendment this year.
Okay.
Utility services, well, we were at the new position 6,005 for comm services, a budget transfer at 10,009 for utility services. There's a benefit increase for the insurance at 17. Their increase in radio costs citywide and software maintenance, 80,000.4. 4,000 in the tuition sponsorship,
What is that?
the 80,000. So through inventory, we've seen, and I'm fully aware with it, is that these radios are just a huge, huge cost. Some of them I would never even equate that they're at the price that they are, which is, some of them are 4,000. The docking station is 10,000. So you're thinking we're getting a whole lot of them, and it's just a very exuberant cost, and their shelf life is a 5-year shelf life, and we're at the stage where they've used them as far as they can go, and it's a reoccurring cost because it gets rotated every 5 years, aside from normal breaks and tears and things of that nature. But it's a, very extensive cost for that equipment. It keeps up rising as well every year, because through the inventory, we saw just the natural rate of the fixed asset go up, exponentially just between one lap of a year. We're not even talking 5. So I guess I consider that a kind of a cost to do business, but it's just a very, very expensive. Now, I will present and submit that what we can do to lessen the blow is maybe project out a better life cycle for these items so that we can prep earlier when we need.
Would it be a capital if you're going in bulk?
So that is what we're cleaning up, because they've done that, and you can't do it in bulk, but you shouldn't, because it's the single item we want to depreciate fully, not as a bulk item. We've done that a lot to kind of, move around funding and be able to get it, or, and I understand the needs of the operation. However, as a fixed asset, we shouldn't.
I just didn't know, then can we do like we do with cars? And I know radios break, but okay, we got 50 radios of 5 years, let's start planning it that way type of deal. So
That's what I would submit, is that we know it's 5 years. We should have a better life cycle to know ahead of time that this expense is coming up, and how many do we realistically need. Right now with the inventory, that should clean up to give accurate numbers, because there was a lot of just old stuff that they're not using. They've been waiting to dispose them, to be fair with you on that.
And the software, is that something else that y'all are getting?
Yes, including in all this is it's a contract with Osceola County. As you know, that basically puts the radio services out, and that's what, 80,000 and change as far as that's concerned. So, and that's an ongoing process. And that's actually a fairly good rate in the market, because Motorola literally has a captive market. And we burn these radios up to the last minute before they're replaced, but they are our lifeline, and ultimately they're expensive, unfortunately.
I've never seen duct tape used so efficiently.
Yes.
Do they color coordinate? That's
Yes.
what's important.
They
Yes.
match the belt.
Tuition and sponsorship at 4,000. Cost for the equipment, 35 replacement computers at 39.7. This again is also a lifespan thing. It's not them getting any other computers just because they felt like it. It is them replacing exactly what they had to be up to speed with operations. The cost of fuel, of course, a national issue throughout, and it doesn't escape us here at 45,000. And a budget transfer for the reduction in the account for training as requested through the budget process, and repair of the training facility, assessments for fire alarm and install at 20 2,000. In the communications department, there's the salaries and adjustment, the overtime at 4,004 due to the calls of service, and the FICA and healthcare benefits at 7K and 12K respectively. In the EOC, budget transfers with an overall reduction in maintenance contracts, 11.5. Desktop computers replaced for EOC at 10.6. Training at 2,000 as a reduction, and the facility assessment fire alarm install at 10.2.
Are we using the EOC that much?
We are in the, for example, the desktops are antiquated and have to be replaced. That's really the only major, but we do it as much as possible with training with the fire department and the services within. So it's ready to go should we need it here in these next few months. Let's hope we don't.
Code enforcement at COLA increase at 6,000. Overtime, FICA pension, the ICMA as asked before, health insurance, all benefit increases in service to the code enforcement department. Any questions further on police? All right, moving on to fire, for real this time. Operating expenses at 81%. Personnel at 81%, 19% for operating expenses, and $6,300 on capital outlay. First up to bat with variances. There is your overtime as seen in the question you had previous with PD of 31,000, 13 new employees, less than a year experience. Promotional services, an increase of 3,900. Increasing staff for the SAFER grant, expected retirement, for medical care, 4,300. Restructure of the budget, 6.7 average tenor due to the retirements of travel and per diem. That's a restructuring of the reduction in travel and per diem at 27,000. 7,000 in comm that was reduced, took on smart cell phone from EMS budget. The utilities transferred from EMS budget to fire. They placed an additional dumpster, 59,000 in utility services. The insurance increased due to those drug tests and annual physicals. Additional software for fire prevention at 6,700. Repairs and maintenance, $7,000. Promotional ceremonies at 2. Your operating supplies, 23,000 on the prevention and budget restructure for fire for the new prevention practices and gear. And volume and travel from the heavy congestions, 7,700. Uniform cost increase due to the CBA at 10,000 and training at 3,009 for the department's tenure. EMS, 8,000 in overtime. Increase in merchant activities, 2,300. Insurance at 4,000 increase in the physicals as well. Repairs and maintenance, additional software and maintenance for the current software to be just operational at 34,000. Based on the previous charges on repairs and maintenance, they consistently requested or have a variance of 9,005. And operating supplies, due to just the cost of business, medical supplies increase 18,008. Vehicle fuel cost at 6,001 increase due to just the volume. Questions?
I do have a question. I just happened to pick up on page 85. Special pay. a $210,000 increase. Are we anticipating something there?
Now, what happened was we restructured in the union contract. We used to pay an incentive for the paramedics, and we restructured that to be an annual adjustment. So that's why they picked up that additional cost in the union contract.
So was it somewhere else in the budget previously?
Yes, it was actually put in their salary, but we broke it out as a incentive, and then there was an increase in that incentive in the contract and negotiations. So it used to be like, you used to have a rank of paramedic in the city of St. Cloud. We no longer have the rank of paramedic. We have a firefighter who's certified as a paramedic, and they get that incentive on top of their base salary. And that increased also because of the contract.
So the 13 new employees, that 238,000 then also includes where you took away the 210 and moved it down to special pay. Is that what I'm understanding, Dawn?
Correct, but the special pay went up. There was
Right.
an increase in pay
Okay.
because of the union contract.
Okay. I guess what I think is kind of missed in this breakdown is, like, the police department showed that they had a 108,000 increase in salary expenses, but this one went straight into overtime and overlooked that increase.
Sorry, what page?
It doesn't say it in the variances, is what she said.
Yeah. Page 90 compared to page 85. And the variances, they didn't point out the increase in salary.
Yeah.
Salaries.
Yeah.
A lot of departments, they put their variances together, and often they don't have access to actual payroll.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a finance thing, so they don't really like to speak of it. They, of what increases them, and they just sometimes skip over that line item. They
I
don't
just
input
wonder
it.
if we should have that when we present to council,
Sure,
so they know where, because we do know a lot of it is coming in staff and.
correct. I think the biggest recommendation, if I understand correctly, would be this variance sheet to kind of correlate more so we could get net, the math is there for everybody to see very easily and comparative. Is that, a fair statement? That would make it better?
Pretty close,
Pretty
but
close.
at the same time, you're not going to report the $700, the 50. and-
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think what you have isn't bad at all.
Okay.
I think you're getting what we need. Give me this.
Tweak it.
It just
Yeah.
needs to be a little tighter.
Tight-
Like, the police had their salaries, but fire didn't. And it's just because you guys are trying to get all this together, and everybody reports differently, and it's just an oversight thing, so.
We'll forgive the fire.
yeah, they're troublesome guys
They were
over there.
sneaking that in.
Yeah, that chief guy.
They're like, wow,
Yeah,
the chief took all the heat. I'm good.
so, okay.
He's already left. He's left the building. Gone. Whew. I better not get any more OT. Gotta leave. Y'all tell him that now. My brother has now got a new job.
We are at Public Works. Any other questions before I move to Public Works? No?
Should be good.
Okay.
Page 95, I believe.
95 for the variances. All right, 77% in personnel, 23% in operating and no capital. Increased in wages, FICA, health, workers' comp are all with the increased salaries of 70K, 5, 15K, and 6,000 respectfully for those elements. Sidewalk repairs by a contractor, 5,000. And prior year actual, the increase was based on a prior year actual for vehicle maintenance and the cost of fuel.
Ninety-seven.
97.
Yep. Traffic.
All right. Public services, traffic, same scenario, salaries, health, workers' comp, all increased wages, health, and insurance cost. Vehicle maintenance for the additional vehicle at 2,000. And operating supplies, they combined, as they are stating there, two accounts. Funding is moved to the gas tax fund for operating supplies, 33,005. Any question on those?
Yeah, I guess my question is on page 95, the 4602 vehicle maintenance. Prior year actual, when I go back to page 93, looking at prior year actual, doesn't really explain itself.
No, it doesn't.
They budgeted 12,000. Oh, they must have had an amendment then.
Year-to-date was 11.5, so, sorry, Donna.
I'm
if you're
sorry,
done.
year-to-date is, okay,
Yes,
almost
sir.
12.
Almost 12, yes, ma'am.
Compared to a $35,000 budget, but then they need another 13.
Right here. So they're here asking for this, but they have this, which is the reoccurring expenditures that have not hit, maybe for vehicle maintenance or projected to hit.
I think what they meant by prior year, they're looking at, also when they key in their budget, they can see 2 years prior. In 2017, they spent about 45,000. 2018, they spent 32. I think they're just trying to cover themselves for those unexpected, and they're also looking at the age of the vehicles they have and say, okay, what do we have for maintenance coming up? Vehicle maintenance isn't going to be consistently the same every year. If they've got a fleet of 10 vehicles or 5 vehicles, they have certain maintenance that they don't get every year, like tires. So they look at their schedule of maintenance and see what's due, and it might fluctuate. There's no other indication. Let me look at the detail real quick.
I think they need a better description on why they're asking for the additional funds, just.
Yeah, I would have probably advised to write them where they based it on actuals and showed you the 45 actual and 32 actual, and that's how they got to a budget request of 48, which would make it more realistic. I guess the way it's worded, it's just showing 13 is what we actually did. They're not year-to-date.
Yeah.
They're at 11,000, but they've hit 32 to $45,000. So we can reword that.
Yeah.
You know, to kind of, because I understood it as I read it, just like that too. All right, streets and drainage. I did traffic, and there was no questions. Any other questions for Public Works? Oh, okay. Parks and Rec, 56% in personnel services, 41% in operating, 3% in capital outlay. Variance page for this one starts at IMN page, if I can flip there, sorry. 110. Parks and Rec. Operating supplies, equipment replacement, 3,000 for turf and landscape. Overall in parks, overtime, city-sponsored events and sport complex coverage, along with contractual, 5,400 for the aquatic and non-pesticide treatments that are needed for the parks. Portable toilets for those special events in rentals and leases, 3,600. Repairs and maintenance, security cameras, 17,007 for Opie Johnson, Chisholm, Godwin, and 901 Virginia Parks. Furnishings for the 901 Virginia Park at 5,740 in operating supplies. Fire alarm install at Hopkins Park, 83,200, including Civic Center Gym B, which includes a 5-ton AC unit and heat pump replacement, and also in Civic Center Gym, a sprinkler system full retrofit. $8,000 in other improvements, and this would cover a storage shed for the Stephanie Lay Rothstein soccer fields. In recreation, media support for special events, $3,000. Contractual employees, as far as the instructor's comm, is $5,000. Inflatables for those special events and programs, $2,450. And replacing water fountains with ADA fountains, the clocks for the gym, score clocks, table and chair replacements for the St. Cloud Community Center and the St. Cloud Community House at $20,657. In aquatics, $4,000 for the new pool building facility. Security camera and maintenance at $9,280, and chemical costs at for operating supplies at $5,000 in aquatics.
Hey, Bill, I've brought this up many, many times. What are we doing with a future Parks and Rec? We seem to, 200,000 for a roof, 5,000 for this. This brings in revenue. It's really looked upon. They do an awesome job. But I can tell you, I've brought this up for years now. Are we setting money aside to, here we have a beautiful facility in 2021, or are we going to still sit here and continue to feed this animal year after
We
year?
actually just finished a Parks Master Plan that would include all those recommendations. In addition, you know, as you can see, she showed you the impact fees are starting to come in really nice, and so, you know, that's not really a savings account. We're supposed to use that to enhance our facilities for the growth. So I think that's what we're doing with that Parks Master Plan that we've just almost got finished.
So are we, I know we got, again,
Stephanie?
I know we've talked about this I know I've brought this up many budget meetings about, are we doing anything to create because that building has been there since I was a kid. And it's
Time for a new one?
Again, it's.
I got you.
The people do a great job, and that's actually stuff coming in. Why not make that a premier place?
That was only 20 years ago, right?
22, but who's counting? Hi.
Hi. Yes, we are currently looking for property, a fairly large piece of property, more on the east side of town, to build another complex. And we're actively looking for that now, to build a new facility.
But finding a property, are we going to be sitting here in the next 4 or 5 years still discussing? So I can tell you, I've talked to you as a budget about this for years, and I feel like we're not going anywhere. So,
Well, I mean, I can tell you because the contract was approved, I forget, the one that just passed, Center Lake Ranch. So in that agreement, we were, between the fire and us, we were given 11 or 13 acres. 13 acres. So I have sat down with Center Lake and discussed about some possible options. There is a 5-acre tract directly adjacent to that we could possibly approach the property owner to see if they're willing to sell so we could get a bigger piece of property, so we can do something similar as the Civic Center complex. But we just received property.
okay, so we haven't, I've been on this board for 15 years, and I've discussed this for many years, so it looks like, and again, you guys do an awesome job. You guys
Thank
are
you.
nonstop. It makes the city look good. Why not start, again, it was a couple years ago, I think it was 200,000 or 300,000, fix the roof, and let's make this the place people are coming, and we can charge your out of county or out of city upgrades, and I think we could really make this a great place to go. It's already awesome as it is with 40-year-old building probably.
Oh, yeah.
It's time to upgrade at some point. How old? That building's got to be pretty old.
Yeah, I mean, it was there's, it's been added on over the years, but I think the original building's probably 35, maybe 40 years old.
Yeah, it's been around a while.
Is that something that's committee do when you pass the final budget, make that a recommendation? And
I bet you if you really research it, I've made that recommendation probably every year for maybe 5 to 8 years. So
I've heard it for 3 now, so.
to the
But no,
council,
I mean-
I hear you.
To speak for them on the panel that maybe cannot say this or don't feel comfortable enough saying it, I just look at the turnover that I've watched for 3 years from a volunteer position be such a huge project. I know her hands have to be tied because you have to bring the next person up to speed, and it's nobody's fault here, but I think that delays progress.
I just think it's such a great program that they offer, that you guys offer for this is outstanding.
Thank you.
And I'm not attacking, I'm just, to me, I'll go after Bill. I mean, he's new, but I'm just saying, you guys do such awesome job with our kids, our community. And if you look at it, it's 40 years old. It's time to, when you come to St. Cloud, you go to Kissimmee, boom, Civic Center. Big building, and I don't think it compares to what you guys do. Probably not even in the ballpark of what you guys do, and what you can offer, what you're offering. Wouldn't it be nice if we had this and people can come in tournaments and you can increase your staff to accommodate what you're doing? You're probably just running thin as it is, always making ends meet, and you offer such a service for this community, and it's an outstanding job what you do. And
Thank you.
I've seen you, and you come in, you plug away, and you do it with everybody you can. So I just wish we could, and I'll make a recommendation for the 10th, 12th, 15th year in a row, whatever you'd like. I'd be nice to start helping them. Okay, she's got a building, what's the plan? What's the architectural plan? Because I guarantee we planned everything right now. It's going to be 4 or 5 years before it's built. And we ain't even in that realm yet. So now we're looking at 2030 before we might get a building. She'll be long gone, retired, hopefully enjoying life somewhere else. So that's just me venting. I just would like to see.
But we
We
do have that
provide
Parks Master Plan almost complete.
Yes.
Still be on the board.
Yeah, really. Got nothing else.
And did they look at structures? I mean, recommendation of structures, or was it just parkland?
Yeah, it's parkland and where we have a deficiency in park service. But it does mention in the in the master plan, a certain amount of acreage in a new civic center complex that is needed.
I just think it'd be.
I just know, I think we've even been working on that master plan for at least 2 years, getting there, right?
Oh, yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they get that on board, at least they have something to follow.
Yeah.
It's such a great service, so I commend you for doing what you do with what you have, and I think it would just be so much better for you and having a more modern facility. So, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
I'm here for you.
If you need something done, you call David.
Well, it doesn't. I'm here for you. Chief's back, so I'm happy.
All right, what page are we on?
Okay, that was 110.
Okay.
And just, this is the final departmental section we have. Okay. Natural resources, overtime, professional services, overtime at 2005. Professional services, Phase 3, tree survey, graphic and design work, $14,002. Sponsorship for the NYE event, $14,150. Decorations, portable toilets for special events, $3,003. Security camera maintenance, $2,133. And Experience Kissimmee grant, $13,100 for the printing and binding. And the signage for Peghorn, $2,180. In the restaurant and banquet, 4,000 for the cleaning of the facilities in the departments of lobby, elevator, and bathrooms, and replacing an old ice machine at $6,000. Any questions on those? The final schedule that we have is the budget adoption schedule. Thank you. This is just listing, of course, we're having the budget workshop on July 29th with the city council. Moving forward, it would be the public hearing to adopt the budget on September 12th at 6 p.m. and following on September 12th, the public hearing to officially adopt the budget.
I got one, we missed the building department.
I'd missed the building department? No?
We missed that?
Yeah, Don's
On the-
pointed out to her.
Are we, like,
We
I
did the
feel like
general
we're
fund.
missing utilities. Okay.
Economic CRA.
Yeah, we can continue on in the book, but
Yeah,
that's
we
the
just
end of
won't
our
have the-
presentation.
Yeah.
I just thought we were following the
Yeah.
tabs and.
Yep. We are. It's just for the presentation that was the final for Parks and Rec.
She was seeing if you were paying attention.
We ran out of paper.
Yeah.
Wasn't in the budget.
Parks and Rec, okay. 112. All right. Page 112 is the CRA. Variants are listed on page 114. Economic Development has an allocation for a new position, the Community Development Coordinator, at 10,003. Increases related to salary increases are at 3,400, 6,007, and 3,001 for health insurance, pension, and employer, FICA. Additional economic studies and marketing, that includes a hotel feasibility study at 25,000 in professional services. And the allocation of 50% of total expense in the past was only charged to the CRA. The utility service was an increase of 2,600.
Can you explain the 25,000?
Well, professional services, there's a hotel feasibility study. I would assume the feasibility study, just in general, and I can have David, I'm not sure if David's here.
I can answer that. One of the things that a hotelier wants to know when they come here, do you have a feasibility study? I've been asked that numerous times, people looking at the city, so that's what that's for, and they're expensive.
You said hotel investors, when they come,
They ask, do you have a feasibility study? And there was one done 4 years ago, so it needs to be updated. It's, there's always a life as a
Yes,
consultant when you.
we need a hotel.
I agree.
It is feasible.
Thought they were building one already.
Yeah. Someone shared that with us, didn't they?
All
We
right.
could ask them. Do you
Just
know
curious.
if there's a hotel in the works by First Baptist St. Cloud still?
It's my understanding one of the investors had a personal issue and withdrew their funding. So they're still trying to find another investor.
Okay.
Almost.
Page 117.
Yes, sir. Community development, increases in salary, again, salaries, employer FICA, pension, and health, 12.8, 6,007, 13,000 in pension, and 3,900 in health insurance, respectfully for that. In contract, 100, page 117.
Yep, I got it.
You're giving me the you messed up look. 100,000 in addition for 4 police officers. Increased based on finance, the allocation for the admin charges, 11,841. Increase for repairs and maintenance associated with the wayfinding project is 10,000, and that's in equipment and machinery.
What's with the, so we're adding 4 officers?
No, last year we added 3 police officers to patrol the community redevelopment area and then a code enforcement officer. And that's allocated and allowed under state statute. So that comes out of the CRA funds. We added those last year, so.
This is, but are we adding 4 more?
No.
It says
This is
additional 4 police officers.
They were actually put in the budget mid-year. So this is just the allocation to continue on for the next year.
I think the chief could use 4 more.
See,
We can cut that overtime budget in half. No,
If it was just
he has
that easy.
he has a gun.
Take whatever I can get.
What's that?
That's why he came back. He's hoping some more.
Show me the money. All right.
okay. Missing anyone? Water fund,
Utilities.
119 for the water fund, St. Cloud Utilities, Public Services, water fund.
122.
119 for water utilities.
Variance sheet.
Yes, sir, 119. That's what I have. I have a
I'd buy it.
utilities. You have one, right?
118.
119?
119.
Yes, sir, okay. Increase due to the COLA, which includes, obviously, FICA, healthcare, $57,000 for the salary, FICA at $4,000, and health insurance at $3,700. In the contractual services, $44,150 increases with, in association with the CIS version, 4 utility billing upgrade, third-party electronic services for credit checks and payment processes have increased due to the growth. They're saying they need that coverage for that. Mail and freight, $6,124. Past due notices and welcome letters have increased. I can attest to that. And annual contract increases for ASU and Link software at $12,112 in maintenance contracts.
I thought there was talk about outsourcing some of this part water utilities. Is there going to be fees or contracts, anything else like that, that has to be budgeted for it?
For outsourcing, so right now we're sitting back and looking at the benefit or, not of doing that. We've kind of regressed back to kind of look at everything as far as that service go, any of the services really with, utilities and whether we're going to go that route. So at this point, we're trying to capture what the benefit is, how much really do we have an asset that, because we feel that if we make the decision so quickly without getting all the perspectives of what we really have as a business, an enterprise fund, it's too quick of a decision at this point to say, because we don't even know really at this point what the cost is to run the business, accurately before we can put a ticket price to go into the next part of, do we let this go and have somebody else manage it and run it?
Good answer. Which leads to the next question. I think 2 sessions ago, there was only one, there's 4 plants, there's 1 running. Am I right in that? Or
They're
3
all
are
up and running now. We actually had to contract with U.S. Water to come in and help us with some operational issues we've had. I can tell you now that our water quality is very high now. All the plants are operating optimally. And I'm very proud of both the U.S. Water team and our team that did this over the last year. It took about a year to get everything straightened out. And we're actually in the process right now of transitioning. We've hired some new staff to transition to, back to our staff running the day-to-day operations of the plant. Plants.
Is part of the staff increase going to help you assess if you can make it a profitable business model, I guess? Does that make sense?
That's the idea that we've discussed as far as getting all the perspectives, not just the financial perspective, but the operational, because it's been noted, from the director in his experience, is that there's nothing coming about that is something we can't handle. We've got normal issues with it. There's nothing exuberant that says at this point we can't handle it, but we need to get a good idea of what, like I said, that cost is, and what we have currently managing to make the next step in the decision. So we're trying to get everybody's input on that. We just felt it was too quick to, like I said, decide at that point, so.